Aiksquel, Quincidum Namu. It's with great respect and humility that we acknowledge and honor the lands of the Snuneymuxw people. The Snuneymuxw people maintain their profound, unique, and spiritual connection to the land through ageless traditions, teachings, stewardship, and expressions of reciprocity. Thank you for attending this evening, everyone. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please? Trustee Pellegrin, seconded by Trustee Bailey. All in favor? We have some people attending us remotely today. I suppose I should have asked, is anyone in opposed, but we're good. Agenda's been approved. Moving on to item 7, approval of the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting held on December 14th and the special Board of Education meeting held on January 6, 2022. Can I get someone to move the motion? Trustee Rokeby, would you like to read it, please?
I move the minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting held on December 14th, 2022, and the special Board of Education meeting held on January 16th, 2022. Should that read 23? Be adopted?
I'm going to ask staff to confirm, but I believe so. That's correct. We'll make that correction.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, for catching that. So can I get a seconder for the motion as amended? Trustee Pellegrin, anyone opposed to the motion? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the section 72.3 reports. Someone like to read the motion? Trustee Bailey?
That the section 72 report from the special closed Board of Education meeting on December 7th, 2022, January 11th, 2023, and the closed Board of Education meeting on December 14th, 2023.
Have a seconder? Trustee Lee? Anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 9, announcements and reminders. We have a few here this evening. So we have the Education Committee meeting coming up on February the 1st, Business Committee meeting February the 8th, Board of Education meeting on February 22nd, the Statutory Holiday Family Day on February the 20th, and Professional Development Days February 6th and 7th. Moving right along in our agenda to presentations. Zonta Club of Nanaimo with Ms. Paris and team. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrea Paris, formerly known as Andrea Bankowski. I bring greetings tonight from the Zonta Club of Nanaimo. The last few years, I've been the chairperson and I had the pleasure to mentor some young ladies. As you can see, our mission statement is right to your left and right. I'm so excited it's here. So maximize our impact through local service and advocacy initiatives and educational awareness and empower all. So in this mission statement introduction, I would like to introduce you our lovely ladies who are currently doing their practicum with Zonta Club of Nanaimo. We have Jaslyn, we have Kaylee, and sorry, I told them I'm going to forget their names and I'm going to rename everybody. And we are here tonight to share this great news with you. As you know, human trafficking and sexual exploitation does happen in our town. Vancouver, Nanaimo, and Victoria are the highest numbers. You do have our presentation, so I'm not going to bore you reading the presentation, but what I'm trying to do is work with you, pitch you our ideas, why actually we are really here. So as you know that we have the passion for the community. I served the community for 30 years of my life, and currently we have a program which actually costs you nothing, but I'm pitching for you to work with us because we've worked out the system. I know I feel like I'm on Dragon's Den, right? So here we go, so listen me out. Vancouver Island University has this wonderful program called Criminology. All students in 4th year, they have to do practicum. Zonta is an international organization which is able to provide practicum, And one of our goals are human trafficking, amongst, reducing child marriages and other worldly, huge worldwide issues. So how does Nanaimo Zonta help? But we are helping by doing the sponsorship. The girls learning to do, and the ladies and gentlemen, because last year we had a gentleman, to do leadership exercises, host a huge event, which is benefiting School District 68 children and staff, other school children, and the community. Last year, our event was so successful that we discovered that we have to move the program into two different events. We have to have a focused event for children and another focused event for the adults. We have learned that children behave better when parents and adults are not around. So we can cater the presentation to their level, and we can cater the presentation to the adults level. So in a sense, what I would really love from you is that we work together, so I can do all my advertising to say I'm working with School District 68. We already have the city's blessing. We have the Christian school. We have Aspen Grove. We have RCMP working with us. We also have Island Health. The next stop for us is, I don't even know. I'm not going to say that because I will be incorrect. So another group of people. And so what happens is we can bring this program year after year, and we are able to present it to children. And not only the people who are needed, but for those who need to know what are the signs of online experiences, how it's impacting them. And I know I only have 10 minutes, but essentially what I like, which I wrote in on the bottom of the presentation, we'd love to work with you as membership. We can host this event every year simply because we'll be doing practical skills. We can focus on this event. We have 4 powerful speakers this year, and they're able to grow with us. And as we grow with the numbers, our goal would be to get to the 4th theater. As once upon a time, as Mr. Sabel knows, we had the windows of opportunity, right? That is my goal, to get to the windows of opportunity, but for the whole day on awareness. Now I have to bring it to your attention. We are by no means doing sexual education. This is not about sexual education. You don't want to raise the parents' eyebrows whatsoever. This is only bringing awareness to children. Hopefully we can go younger than grade 8, because of course we know the predators are not aiming for 7 to 9 years of age, and they don't differentiate male and female equally being attracted to sex trade. And it's online and in physical, and of course the human trafficking. That's in a nutshell. So hopefully our enthusiasm got you going. And you're going to say, yes, we'd love to work with you. And we would love to do this every year. And you put it on your calendar. It's going to be an event where we can do field trips. And the best part is we're providing free lunch for every student, free attendance, even staff. It's such an important topic that we think this is how we can have awareness versus the other end, where other groups of people. The other good news is about it that having Zonta having this experience, now other groups are pulling in together with us, and we will be focusing on awareness, even though some groups of people, Crisis Society and other victim services, they're still working on how we're going to get them out of the system once they're in. But our focus is to get. That's it in a nutshell. Also, I have to let you know, February 22nd is the Canadian National Awareness for Human Trafficking and Sexual Exploitation, which is only 3 days before the Bullying Day. So maybe we can put it together. Any questions?
Okay, so
Sorry, Mr. Keller, I
No,
don't
it's
want to
okay.
take your job.
Thank you. We'll get to questions in just a quick one. I just want to first thank you for your very enthusiastic presentation and for your time for coming to present to the board this evening. Before we entertain questions, I just would like to give our superintendent a quick opportunity just to maybe share sort of how the district has assisted with this program in the past, and maybe what some of the thoughts are going forward.
Yeah, thanks. Through you, Chair. Ms. Paris, nice to see you.
Thank you.
You had me at hello.
It's like crazy. Why am I nervous?
Nice job. Of course, I hope we did a good job last year helping you out and bringing some students to the event.
You know what
I think the
happened?
timing was bad.
Timing. We
'Cause it was-
ended up being on a double Pro D day.
Exactly. But of course, I was sincere when I said you had me at hello, because I hope, in fact, that maybe Assistant Superintendent Belcombe maybe even gave you a call
He did.
today.
And we had conversed. Thank you.
Yes, so we'd be happy to partner. I just have one question. What took you so long to ask us? You named all these other groups.
We
That you're-
started last year, and somehow when I asked, it got lost in the transition.
Okay.
So I have already pitched to the rest of the group. We have School District 68. Come on, people, you just have to come along. But I officially had to hear it from you. Can we partner? It literally costs you nothing, and it benefits not only your students, the students at VIU, and the people outside. And it is truly awareness. Like, we're not going in to scare children or all that very intimate, very delicate, intricate, painful parts. We really just want to bring that awareness. Listen, these are the signs. This is how we help our peers. And then this is kind of outside of the school grounds. So just everybody learns differently. Although my dream would be is that we could bring it here. I have speakers. Merit is definitely doing it. Ms. Kathy Peters is going to do the presentation to staff. Staff will be able to see what the children will receive. We can do exactly the same for you. And then the children will be brought in. And then lastly, the parents. It seems to be the parents need to be last. That's how the system works. Sorry.
Well, thank you for your work. You're doing a great service to the community, and we would love to partner with you.
I would love that. I would really love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, thank you very much for your presentation. I did see some hands and I missed them. So Naomi, Mark, and was there any others? I know Tanya was there too. And Chantel, okay. I'll go with Naomi first this time, and then I'll come back to Tanya.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. And I have a question. It's more like a little, just give me a snapshot of the history of your organization. You mentioned it's an international organization.
Yes. Our Zone International organization is well over 100 years old. It's literally in every country with thousands of hubs. And Canada has a few. And currently our involvement in Nanaimo is being noticed Canada-wide and North America-wide. Apparently the program we have discovered is for every school district further up and everybody how we can do this. So our club is 30 years old. This year, September, they're 28, and the international organization is 102 years old. So when you go zonta.org, you see all our goals. They're changing biannually. We just had our biannual meeting with Germany, Hamburg, and we set priorities, and there's a huge budget. And the best part about it, that our organization has a UN seat. So we are truly recognized for the worldwide goodness we do. We chose to pick a local initiative. Our club tried not to go over the boundaries. We want to focus on our children in our own backyard.
I just have a follow-up. So is the organization, it's a women's organization?
It was.
It was. Okay.
And as as times changes, we recognize there are men and women equally important. So actually, Nanaimo has more male than every other club. So we have 5 male members.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So on the speakers list, we have a few more.
Sure,
Can't let you off quite that easy. So I have Tanya, Mark, and then Chantel.
Well, my main question may be redundant because the superintendent kind of stole my thunder. I was going to ask when you needed us to make a decision as to whether we would be willing to partner. But I think we should be partnering with this. I think it's fantastic. I guess what I'll ask through you, Chair, is do we need a formal motion for the board to support this, or are we just going to leave this with staff as an operational matter?
No, we don't need a motion. Staff's already in the
Okay.
process of working with them.
Okay.
Thanks, Tanya. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the delegation. Andrea, it's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
I didn't know it was you at first. I thought there might be a younger version of you because we all age except for you. I didn't know what was going on. So it's a pleasure to see you again. I have a question for actually Jasleen, Kaylee, and Aiden. how long have you been studying criminology and what got you into it?
There's a criminology and I'm looking to study human trafficking, and then apply to law school after that. So that's basically.
Impressive.
Yeah, but that's basically why
I graduated high school in 2017 and I've been doing criminology. Since then, I've also added on a psychology minor, and addiction study certificate. So I'm kind of leaning towards the psych side more now, but I guess my cheesy answer for getting into criminology is all the shows. And it's a lot more than that, and I really enjoy what I have with it.
Thanks.
And I'm Jazz Lane. I graduated in 2019. I'm from Terrace, if any of you know where that's from, up north. And I started my criminology diploma September of 2019 as well. And my degree, I completed my diploma at the local college of Terrace and then transferred to BIU for my 3rd and 4th year. And there's no like specific reason as to why I chose criminology, but I'd like to do immigration work. And the passion for that kind of stems from my parents immigrating to Canada about 29 years ago now, and all the awesome opportunities I've been given living in Canada with the big move that they did. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
If
And
I may add, these ladies are fantastic. I mean, I learn every year from them because, of course, the age difference, the way they think, the enormous amount of energy and knowledge they bring into. We are teaching them leadership and we are giving them the opportunity for this event, but they have ideas like I didn't think about, right? So it's a phenomenal program. It is.
thank you so very much for sharing with us. As a single parent of 3 daughters, it's very important.
And don't forget, we have a free invitation. You can come in the morning. And
You mentioned something about free lunch, right?
only for the students.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I'll have to enroll. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more question so far from Chantal.
Thank you very much for bringing this topic forward and wanting to work with you. I think it's great. We should totally do this. My questions are actually more practical. It says it's during the week, during a daytime thing. I'm just thinking about some like, I think it might be through you, Chair, to the superintendent is, would all the schools be able to participate? Is that what we're thinking of doing? Like, can I pull my kid so that I make sure he, gets into that? Like, how does that work? Like, how do you envision it? Field trip, right, exactly.
I don't think I think there were 400 seats,
Yes,
if I'm correct,
400,
yeah. And so we haven't figured out the logistics around that yet.
And I did offer, if I have to move the adults out, we're willing to put 2 hours to have maximized. I mean, we can repeat ourselves. We have the resources, all the presenters understand that we are in the process of not knowing how many students we'll have, so they have to prepare to repeat themselves.
Thank you, thank you.
And at that day, you will hear these lovely ladies making 8-10-minute presentation as well.
I'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks again for coming this evening and presenting to the board.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
And once again, we apologize. We don't want to do what we are going to take up. Somebody needs to let us out. Walk us. Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
Specifically in our policy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Probably. If we go the policy in order for us to leave or something. Great. I have a question, but it wasn't really for the presenter.
Okay. Maybe we should wait for superintendent to come back.
I just wasn't sure.
Is it related to the presentation? Okay. So we're just waiting for the superintendent to return and then we can continue on. So just before we welcome our next presenters, Tom just had a quick question about the last presentation. Oh, someone speakers.
Hope it's not me. Oh,
As it turns out, it is.
it was me. My apologies, and thank you for allowing me this topical conversation point. But I love these relationships with the district can make with these organizations that are locally doing great work. And I guess this was my opportunity to try to put in a point. I met because of the Women's March last week. There's been a lot of really amazing projects initiated around town. It always brings up a lot of energy. And there's a group in town that I'm familiar with called Women Helping Women. And they were talking to me, one of their members was talking to me last night about they're trying to make sure that families in the district know about the federal dental plan. And I was just wondering if the district doesn't have a role with trying to get that information to our families. I'm just thinking, I don't mean to digress, but it just looks like another opportunity to partner with a local group that's already trying to do good work that would benefit our families. So I thought I'd put that on the table. Thank you.
So I think that might go a little bit beyond our presentation,
All
but
right.
good
I
good
love partnering with
question.
Good partner organization.
And maybe that could be the topic for a future meeting, perhaps. If they're
I'll just take it away.
okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I do believe through you, Chair, that we did a communication not so long ago to the district about the federal dental plan, and it's been top of mind for some of us.
Good.
My wife's a dental hygienist, so
Oh, there you go.
she
Okay.
reminds me. So,
Yeah, they got about a quarter of the expected take up, is what I was
It's-
told. So
yeah,
just want to keep going with it.
and
Okay.
we will. Thank you for the
Thank you.
reminder.
Thanks, Superintendent. Our next presenters, welcome. Thank you for coming this evening. We've got the Our Health, Our Community Survey Project Team.
The team of two. Yeah, so thanks everyone. Nala. My name is Jennifer. I am one of the public health and preventative medicine and I'm the medical officer for Valley. I will say it's been a lot of Scottsdale. I'm not surprised if I don't hear you to have some PTSD since many of our conversations were during the heat of COVID and what we're doing in terms of classrooms. I'm here with my friend and colleague Vanessa Data here today, and we wanted to.
So I'm really sorry. I was just going to see if you could maybe make sure you speak into the mic a little bit so that
Here.
Yeah.
people at home can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm here with my colleague Vanessa Data here today, and we're talking about a survey that we have the opportunity to roll out within the Cowichan Valley region. So some of the area within your school district, and really just drawing a bit from the last question, this survey is not on students themselves, but is really looking at people over 18 years of age and really about how we have information about our families and how we can help support health for families and including students within the region. So this is a unique opportunity for the Cowichan Valley region. This survey was rolled out before COVID in the Vancouver Coastal and Fraser Health Authorities, and leading up to just before COVID, Island Health, Interior, and Northern Health were really seeing how they could roll this out in their regions, and then COVID happened. But because of relationships that were in the Cowichan Valley region, including with our Community Health Network, there had been some data released previously with a version of this survey, and there was the desire and the momentum to really try and do something like this again. So now we're looking at this opportunity we had from Island Health with community wellness grants, which some of you may be familiar with. They didn't roll out during COVID because of all the restrictions in place. So some of that money became available and we were able to attain 180,000 to roll this survey out, specifically only in this region. So it's going to be a pilot for the rest of the island health. It'll give us local level data on health and wellness, some of our neighborhood characteristics, and things such as community belonging for our residents who are 18 years and older. And we have a standardized survey. It's about 80 questions. We can make adjustments with that. That is the survey that is rolled out in other regions. And we have the ability to make region-specific questions that we'll develop in consultation with our communities. We, in the previous version of this survey that rolled out pre-COVID, had about 500 people who responded. Mostly they were women between the ages of 45 and 55. And while I feel that's a pretty important demographic myself, that's not really giving us a good picture of what's going on in the community as a whole. So with this funding that we have, and especially people like Vanessa working with us, we have a strong impetus to get a very representative response, which means we want to far surpass 4,500 responses across the region.
So for our purposes today, what value does the survey propose to bring for a school board? And so the ultimate goal is for the results to identify health status, health inequities, and the priorities of Cowichan Valley residents. So obtaining really that localized level, that population level data from residents in the Cowichan Valley, and to use that data and results to inform local evidence-based decision-making around community health and wellness programs and initiatives and planning, the creation of health promoting environments, healthy public policy development and implementation, as well as resource allocation and funding opportunities, and a lot more. And before going to the next slide, I should clarify that when we're talking about sharing this data, this is information, the results, not the raw data, but the results will be available to our whole community. We have within Island Health an amazing team of analysts, and once we release the data, their job will be to work with stakeholders in the community and to share reports and results with them that are specific to their community, their needs, their organization, that can give them a bit of insight as to the health status and the priorities of community residents within the Cowichan Valley. To give a few examples of how data from previous surveys like this have been used, the example that Dr. Waters mentioned, the My Health, My Community survey, which was hosted in 2014 in the Lower Mainland, they were able to share the results of that data for public good. So as you can see on the screen, there's 5 examples. HandyDart was able to look at the data and identify gaps within their own service and then make amendments. City of New Westminster used the information to inform their Walk 30 Burnaby New West initiative, which was a local walking challenge that got people outside, enjoying physical activity in the outdoors, but also making social connections. And Vancouver Division of Family Practice was able to use the data to inform their GP for Me initiative. So there's a lot of unique ways that data from this type of survey can be used, and that's because we're not just looking at health from that clinical perspective, we're looking at that social determinants of health perspective. So the intersection between our demographics and health, between our ability to access healthy waterways and airways, climate change, our ability to access services, education, all of those elements that go into supporting a community or an individual to live a healthy and well lifestyle.
In terms of our region and what this could really help inform us on, I wanted to share a few priority areas that I feel we could really use additional data to help us figure out how to best support the community in these areas. The first thing I wanted to talk about is mental health and resiliency. Hands down, here in this region, across the province, across the country, the #1 health burden is in the area of mental health. And this has not gotten better during the time of COVID. Some of you may have partaken in SPEAK survey rounds 1 and 2, which took place during COVID. And for our region, what we found is unfortunately areas such as strong sense of community belonging got worse over the time of our interventions of COVID. People reported less connections with friends, worse mental health, and increasing feelings of helplessness. This is an area we already knew we had to put a lot of focus, and we have even more need to do so. And this survey will help inform us where we're at coming out of COVID and, you know, the time when the interventions in place to help prevent the spread were more intense. I can't speak about mental health and resiliency without mentioning the very significant crisis we've been in for a number of years. This is looking at the deaths we've had due to the illicit drug toxicity crisis within the Cowichan Valley region. And here you can see along the top, the bar indicating the number of deaths we have had within the Cowichan Valley region since the beginning of the crisis. And unfortunately, what we see here for last year, this is only up until the 30th of September, this data, we were on track to have the highest number of deaths yet within this crisis. We were at 32 deaths in 2022. And what the bottom graph shows there is the orange line is for VHA as a whole, and the blue line is the Cowichan Valley region. So we're fairly on target, not really above or below in terms of the amount of deaths we're seeing. I want to acknowledge that these numbers may be loved ones of people. And the last area I'll comment on, Vanessa mentioned briefly the climate crisis. We have a number of areas where this is already affecting our health. Severe drought this past year in the Mount Washington area, well up into our winter time. We already know through surveys that we've had 16% of our water systems on the island already experiencing water shortages. Our 2021 summer season gave us heat-related mortality in numbers we've never seen. This graph here shows in the central island portion of Vancouver Island, we had 25 deaths in that 5-day time period. And then the graph on the right here shows how our air quality, particularly with the line on the bottom showing when we had a spike of what's called particulate matter in our summer wildfire season. And the top graph shows the red lines when we have far more Ventolin or salbutamol being distributed amongst people who are asthmatic. You can see there's a direct correlation with what's going on with their air quality and how people's health is affected. The last thing I'll just say here is this is some specific data from the round 1 and round 2 results of the SPEAK survey, and particularly around what this gives us information in terms of how our families are doing and our children. What we reported here was people showing increased stress and alcohol consumption, helplessness, worsening mental health, less connection with friends, and weaker sense of community belonging. And then those residents living with children reporting that their children had increased stress, increased screen time, and less connection with friends. People may have already, noticed this anecdotally in their own family or amongst friends as well, but this gives us information to be able to create, funding opportunities, targeted interventions to help really try and, alleviate some of what this is putting into our families and our children and our communities.
So just briefly on our project scope, we have about a 1-year timeline. And so as a team, we came together between Island Health and the Our Cowichan Communities Health Network. And I came on board in September as the project manager. And we started with survey development. We're hoping to launch the survey, if everything goes to plan, in the spring this year. And then reporting back starting at the end of the summer. And throughout this, central to our work is community engagement. So in order for the survey to be distinct from other data collection methods, like we see at the federal, provincial, regional levels, we need to have localized questions. We need questions that are really relevant to, Malahat to Ladysmith, East and West. And so we're reaching out to community stakeholders, such as the school board here, to ask for input as to what questions should we be asking, right? We're working through a collaborative process. I'll just advance, to the previous slide. We're working to not only engage our broader communities to, share information that, hey, the survey is coming out this year, but we're actively working to consult, involve, and collaborate with a diversity of stakeholders to say, hey, this is a survey for all of us, really. What questions are the priorities? What are your organization's questions? What data gaps do you need? And how can this survey be of service to that? And so we're really hoping ultimately, at the end of the day, we're going to generate results that we can share that will empower our community really to mobilize the results to create meaningful change in our communities. And this brings us to sort of the opportunity we have to present tonight is an opportunity to work together. And so, similar, we've asked the school board in the Cowichan Valley, we would like School Board District 68 to ask, what questions would you like to see included in the survey? Recognizing that the survey is only accessible to anyone who identifies as 18 years and older, but from that family or that broader community perspective, what are the data gaps? What are the priorities? What are the needs? And how can the survey possibly include those questions in our question set? And so we have a simple submission form that we can email out. We're offering up 5 questions. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but we're reaching out to a lot of organizations, and we have to be conscious that we can really only ask about 80 questions before people are going to max out. So we need to be respectful of that parameter. What are there 5 questions that you would like to share with us? And if so, we can happily share the form as well as the sample questions from that survey in Vancouver, just to give you a frame of reference for what other surveys have asked. And then our second sort of ask for tonight is there an opportunity for the school board to promote the survey once it goes live? You know, taking your social media, your communication channels, and leveraging that to, especially for like the Ladysmith area, obviously, to share information that the survey is out. And we really need responses from community members. As Dr. Water mentioned, we need a baseline of 4,500. And if anyone here has ever conducted surveys, it's a lot of people. And it takes a lot of work to get the word out and to get people to fill out the survey. And so we need to show not only community collaboration, but a high level buy-in and motivation and momentum behind that survey. So if there's an opportunity for us to share a media kit in the spring when that comes out, that would just be really appreciated. I think that's it for now. Thank you so much for your time this evening. We really appreciate it. And our contact information is in the slide deck, but we're also happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. I'll open the floor for any questions from trustees.
I thank you. Data is always good, and this kind of data is critically important at this time. Glad that we've been doing this for a while, so you can kind of see the difference and stuff. I'm not exactly sure what my question is particularly, but I think when you talk about trying to get more representation and stuff like that, actually asking here. When we submit our 5 questions, and we'll talk about this as a board and everything like that, can we submit ideas as well on how to connect with more representation? Stuff like that, is that welcome?
Yeah, like the feedback form is pretty open. So we ask, you know, what's your question? What are the variables? We can't ask too many qualitative questions. We're focusing, obviously, a large survey like this, mostly quantitative. But then there's a subfield there that asks, you know, why are you asking this question? And so you can give us as much feedback really as you'd like. And you'll be sending the emails to me. So I'm happy to have a conversation or additional submitted emails or as guide or provide clarification.
Naomi?
Sorry, I just have to get a little technical here. All right. Thank you. Yeah, anything that's going to collect information that's going to help a community, I value very much. I particularly, with the mental health piece, you know, we know that we have a lot of issues with mental health in our school district. I work at the university as well. We have seen a lot of issues in the aftermath of the pandemic. I wanted to ask you, going to the your presentation, you had mentioned the value to the school board. I was wondering if you could just elaborate on one of the values was resource allocation and funding opportunities. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, I think for example, with the example that we shared from the COVID Speak survey, where there was specific questions around how the family might have perceived what was happening in the children's environment with increased stress or screen time or things of that nature. Like, I think when we're looking at different funding opportunities that might be available, when you can have very specific data showing like what's happening within your region, that makes those types of things, I think, stronger. And, you know, if there's something different or unique about a region as well, then that may make it something that, you know, we want to specifically highlight on. So I think those are the types of things that could be valuable for all types of different funding opportunities, and also for focus. Like some of this, you know, we could take information in within Island Health as an organization. I mean, we do have, you know, some child and youth services. We don't have enough, but I think when we can have the information to help show us where the burden is, that can be used toward those types of things.
Thank you very much. And I just want to add an additional thank you for all the work that you have done as a medical officer, doctor. in the last 3 years. I have a lot of gratitude to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Naomi. Mark.
Thank you. And through you to the delegation. Thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure. Really exciting to know every time that we're gathering information, assembling information, doing research, and then that's what schools are all about, is that we learn from research, we learn from what we gather. So, and again, thank you also for the work you've done. My question would be, you mentioned about the demographics, 45 to 55 females. I mean, you know, how are you going outside that boundary? How are you trying to get the older generation, the younger generation, the diverse generation, the minority generation, you know, everybody, all the demographics that are important?
No, really important question. Thank you. The basis is community consultation. And so 70% of my job is community engagement and setting up meetings and having conversations with diversity of stakeholders, asking how do we make this survey accessible? And, you know, how do we make it safe for a lot of communities? How do we make sure that we are connecting with the right organizations and individuals who can champion the survey to make sure that we have a broad scope in how we're planning this? But also we've got stakeholders in the community who are going to help us when we're ready to launch, and we can share it and get it out to as many people as possible. We also have a few protocols on our end. So we'll have the survey live online, but we'll also have print surveys available for anyone who might face barriers to accessing online technology or a phone, or who might have, you know, literacy or numeracy barriers that prevent them from using a computer. And we will also be hiring within the community surveyors, so peer and student surveyors who work with defined populations to provide support and service to complete the survey, whether that's online or print. And so we're in negotiation right now with a lot of different service providers as to who we will lead that. That's part of our plan for community engagement, to make sure that the survey is low barrier as possible. And then the other one is making sure that the language and the way we articulate the survey is accessible and feels safe to a broader community. So same process, we're in negotiation and consultation with different organizations who can provide support to ensure that the wording is accessible. We're looking at translation services and the logistics all around that. And then in terms of the demographics, so the age cohorts, yes, so working with different agencies to make sure that, yes, we're targeting, you know, women 45 to 50, but, you know, we also recognize within survey research in our community, younger males are often a demographic that are overlooked, but equally important to recognize. So how do we reach out to them? You know, are there community events that we can connect survey to them at, and things like that? Are there seniors organizations that we can set up a booth and have a chat and get people to hear about the survey and share information on it?
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you. Well, robust answer. My follow-up question is, if we could give you the ideal support, or what would be ideal that we as a district could do for you? If you could make, well, get the magic wand and say, school district G, do this, what would it be?
Not one. Share the survey. Share the survey with parents and staff. And within your network, sharing out that survey and communicating why this is important. This isn't just another survey. We realize communities are often overtaxed with surveys, and we're very conscious of this factor. But this is a really unique opportunity to inform localized program, but we can't do it without community individual support. And so sharing that information, the media kit when it's live, would be amazing.
And one thing your question makes me think of as well is we could go back and ask our EPI team, because what we've asked them is that at a community level, what would be a target number to try and hit? So it might be useful if we can see if there's a target number to try and hit for the schools within your district that are within the Cowichan Valley regions, because it's kind of, you know, fun sometimes and, you know, interesting to know how close you might be to a target for, you know, the most robust type of data that you can have. So that's something maybe we can get back to you guys on too.
Thanks. Tom.
Hi. Thank you for coming, and such a great presentation. I only have a question as much as an observation that I wanted to share, and that I really see some fruitful ground here for us to inform our active transportation plans for that part of our district. We're also looking for data in ways that it's hard to find. We share your desire to reach communities that we don't often hear from. So thank you for doing that work, and hopefully we can help you and you can help us do a better job.
Thanks, Tom. Anyone else? Guess I'm last on the list. Just again, thank you for your presentation. And I'll echo Tom's comments about the link between health, being active transportation and environment. It's all really important. And it's often a link that I think a lot of people don't think about. Childhood obesity, for example, there's a link to active transportation. There's a link to environment. And it's great to see the Public Health Office working on that. And leading to my question, it's great that Cowichan's doing it. Are your counterparts in Nanaimo also doing it or something similar, so that we may have an opportunity to get data across the district and not just limited to Cowichan?
Yeah, so at this point, the rollout was at the Cowichan Valley Regional District, and so we wanted to make sure we included talking to this school district, regional district, school district, because of, you know, the certain schools within the Ladysmith area. While this is a pilot being rolled out with some one-time funding from the community wellness grants, what we're really trying to do in this project is prove to Island Health what value this has, so that this can be something that's rolled out across the region. Certainly, we don't want to create inequitable situations, but this was where we could roll out, and so we're trying to figure out how this works and how we do it across the region as a whole.
Great, thank you.
Maybe to finish off through you, Chair, is just commit to helping you through our networks to advertise the survey through the Ladysmith community, and so we can certainly do that. We look forward to that connection. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you, Dr. Waters, for all your support. Mostly you could find me under my desk, curled up in a ball over the last 3 years, but you were a beacon of hope, maybe, on a pandemic response team. So thank you.
I just remember you're like, you're not the person I want to follow me right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, nice to see you in person.
Thanks again. Really appreciate you coming out today. Okay, thank you. Moving on in our agenda, we'll move on to correspondence, item 11.1. So just a reminder for trustees, when we get correspondence, we basically have, the board is being asked to do basically one of three things. Refer it to the chair for a response, refer it to staff for a response, or refer it to a standing committee if the board feels that there's more. It's one more. If there's a need to have a conversation, or it can just receive and file. Yes. So the first piece of correspondence is from D. Crooks, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, regarding traffic control. There's a recommendation there for the correspondence to be referred to staff for response. Do we have someone that's willing to move the motion? Leanna, would you read it, please?
That the Board of Education of School District Number 68 and Nanaimo Ladysmith refer the correspondence from groups to staff for response.
I believe I saw, yes, Tanya seconded the motion. Any discussion? I don't know who I saw first. Let's go with Mark this time.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking against the motion, I believe that there's value in discussing this further. The contents of the letter are quite concerning. We have a situation where young children are, I wouldn't say in a dangerous situation, but in a precarious situation that could lead to dangerous situation given opportunity. We have discussed between ourselves risk in terms of prom, in terms of risk assessments, and how much risk does the district want to take with respect to children doing traffic on busy roads, which is an adult job, that I'm not comfortable with that. I think we need to discuss it further. I know that there are at least 2 schools at the moment, Rock City and Georgia, that still do that. Quarterway did, but I don't believe that they do any longer. It's my understanding, and I'll give a reference. Many years ago, the Traffic Safety Committee from Randerson Ridge sat down, and one parent said, "Why don't we have what they do at Rock City?" And the principal said, "As long as I'm the principal of this school, kids are not going to be doing traffic safety. I will not endanger their life. I will not endanger, I will not put the district at risk." And I admired the principal's position for that. And I've heard that time and time again throughout the district, that principals, and that's why out of all our schools, there are only 2 schools that were willing to do this. So I'm voting against the motion, and I will hope that we can send it to committee for further consideration, because I do not want to put in a situation where 3 years down the road, 2-3 months down the road, something has happened, and then we have the public en masse saying you had an opportunity to do something and you didn't. And I would like to be on the right side of history on this. So can I ask for a recorded vote as well? Thank you on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bailey.
I'm also going to speak against the motion. I read the letter last night, and I just feel that this warrants more discussion. I think as trustees, we need to know the depth and breadth that these students have gone through in terms of training, because I did hear in conversation that there was some sort of training that they did. I would like to have more details on that, as well as know what kind of supervision is happening, adult supervision is happening at the same time. I just don't know more the logistics of what has been set up. Therefore, I'd like to see this be moved to standing committee where we can discuss and get that information from staff.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Yeah, speaking against the motion, I would like to, again, agreeing with Trustee Bailey and Trustee Robinson, see some more conversation on this topic. This correspondent seems to be incredibly well informed from a professional standpoint. He speaks with some really clear standards and criteria that would be, I assume, would be industry standard. And I guess I am a parent at Quarterway, and my kids have been involved with the crossing guard programs. I've noticed that they're inconsistent, and I was relieved to see this year that the principals decided to pull the kids off of town site and replace them with orange pylons. So I feel like whatever we're doing in this area, we're not yet doing it consistently, and that would be my goal, is to get some certainty across the board about is this to be, I'm being led to almost believe that this is being left to a school by school decision, but maybe I'm wrong about that. If it is, I don't think we're doing our due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya?
Thank you, Chair. May I, and this may require an amendment, but I would propose that we send a response to the individual stating that we are aware that we have, thank you for your concern. We will further discuss the matter, and that we've referred it to the business committee, and we'll have staff give us a better, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out a way to, I don't like letting things like this go too long in terms of the individual getting a response that we're aware of it, and that we're going to, that we will look into it deeper if that is what the will of the board is. So I'm wondering if there's a way to do both.
Thank you, Tanya. So if that's the will of the board, then I would recommend that we call a vote to defeat the motion and then welcome a replacement. That would be the proper way to do it. Any other comments?
through that Rock City one every single day, and it's terrifying in the winter when it's dark out and raining. And yeah, like as somebody that walks around in orange and almost gets hit by a car in my orange, it's pretty scary.
Any other thoughts before I call a question? Okay, I will call the question on the motion. If you're opposed to the motion, please indicate so in the chat.
Sorry, Greg, I did it twice.
Okay.
Spelled it wrong. I
Okay,
spelled it wrong the first time.
maybe what we can do is the motion did not pass, but I believe that trustee Robinson asked for a recorded vote. I don't know that. Well, is there anyone that's voting in support of the motion? Why don't we do it that way? Because I don't know if there is. I think it was unanimously voted down. That's what I'm seeing here. Okay, so if the board wishes to propose an alternate to refer it to the business committee, then someone can move to table that. Simon?
I'd like to make a motion that we refer this letter to the business committee.
And seconded by, thank you, by Mark. Would you like to motivate the motion, Bailey?
Yeah, just basically, I just think it's really important that this letter warrants further discussion in more depth. And so I think that referring it to the business committee would be the best course of action.
Okay. Any other discussion? Was that a hand, Leanne? Go ahead, please.
May I just ask if that means that you're going to respond to the individual beforehand or not? Because the business committee isn't for another multiple weeks. So then this individual has had like up to 5-6 weeks with no response, which could create some angst.
I propose an amendment.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
So, sorry, I'll just go to the camera. So the individual has received confirmation of receipt and that the item would be coming to this agenda. Ms. Matthews, that's correct? Yeah, and so just can I confirm in that event, would we update them that we moved it to the board or we moved it to the business committee?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's not necessary.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, carries. Thank you. Moving on to 11.2, our second piece of correspondence this evening, additional bus stop request. Is there someone willing to move the motion? Chantel? Read it, please.
Regarding 11.2 additional bus stop request. That the Board of Education of School District number 68 and I'm Lady Smith refer the correspondence from Day Crook to the board chair for response.
Do we have a seconder? Mark? Would you like to motivate the motion?
Would, and this is actually my school. And I kind of actually understand what they're talking about quite a bit about this. I don't know, you know, what the operations side is or anything like that. But I'm feeling conflicted here that I would appreciate that we would take this into consideration when doing the bus route for Mountain View, because it's quite a long distance for little children to walk You know, I know for myself, like even just ours is pretty far. So I actually speaking against doing this because I would think it needs further discussion, but I don't know how that looks. So
Thank you. So Mark, and I think he wanted to say.
Thanks, Chair. Just so the board's aware, our transportation route review memo will actually be coming to the next business committee. So this exact item, if it was not on there, could be a question. You can anticipate this item is actually going to be on there, already contemplated by staff. But that's what the letter from the chair would likely say, is that our work plan shows that route review is in this time, then you can anticipate it's coming, and if you don't, then that's when the next step of not being satisfied with the process.
fantastic, thank you. Then I would like to. That's yes.
Thank you, Mark.
Quick question, Chair, through you to staff. And maybe someone can answer this for me. I don't remember having the responses sent to trustees. When these letters are sent to letter writers, do we also get the response to see what staff produced?
Mr. Walsh.
Future, typically we don't necessarily copy, but they're all posted on our website. I believe we shared the link. So that they're all available. All letter writers are available at, sorry, maybe I'll share that link with trustees, but we do have a link online that has a copy of the letters.
Right, so for clarity, Chair, when someone writes a letter to the board, we get a copy of that. When the response is done, it's put on the website.
That's what Mr. Walsh just said.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure.
Any other questions? See any online? Okay, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed to the motion? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to committee reports, 12.1, the business committee. I believe that Tanya was going to take this one. Thank you, Tanya.
Yep. Thank you. That the Board of Education of School District Number 68, and I'm Ladysmith, direct the chair to write a letter to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to formally request that the ministry reconsider their decision to not support the recommendations put forward by the stakeholder committee in reference to the Ecole North Oyster Active School Travel Project.
Seconder, Steve Bailey. Trustee Berzovic.
Thank you. Yes, I will happily motivate. I was the zone rep for Ecole North Oyster. I believe it was the last year of this previous term, and this was the most pressing issue at the school for them. So it's a serious danger, and I think that we need to press upon the ministry the need for some, what's the word, flexibility in some of their policies and procedures, because not every situation is the same, and this is a unique scenario, this area, and I think that we should not let this one go.
Thank you, Trustee Berzovic. Any other comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Motion carries. Thank you. We do not have anything from the Education Committee this evening, so we'll move on to senior staff reports. The JEDI update. Mr. Johnston, I'm sorry, my apologies.
No problem. Either is fine with me. Thank you, Chair, and through you, I have provided an information sheet that is attached to the agenda. But I'll go through some of the highlights here. So this is an update on the work we're doing to advance justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the district. This year's work has three main components. The first is the JEDI audit, and this work includes a survey that will be sent out to all stakeholders, administrative employees, staff, teachers, students, parents, to engage their demographic information and their experiences with and hopes for the district's JEDI work. This survey went out to district staff today. Actually, we got a lot of work done in the last week on this and got it out. And it will be going out more widely and be open for a couple of weeks. And then we'll see, hopefully we get a lot of replies and a lot of data to help us. The next part of that will be interviews with key district stakeholders to flesh out some more information about where the district is currently with JEDI work and what needs to be done. This data is being collected by the contractor we're working with, Chanel Thai, EDI, and will be collated and provided to the district and used in our next steps. The second part of the work this year is a policy review, and depending on what the survey and interviews reveal, we'll either be reviewing and updating some of the key policies that engage with the JEDI work, or developing a standalone JEDI administrative procedure, or maybe doing both of those things. We'll just wait and see what that data indicates our stakeholders think we need. The third part of this year's plan is district-wide training. And so again, we'll be relying on the data we're collecting right now to drive the choices we make in what training to provide to across the district. We'll be developing 2 to 3 training modules and test running those or delivering that content to our administrators, principals and vice principals before the end of this school year or at the end of the school year, and then being ready to deliver that more widely going into next school year. So again, the data from what we're collecting right now is really going to be a key component in making the decisions about what we do. It's hard to know what we need to do before we engage the people that we serve and find out what they think. So getting that information is key, and I'd ask everybody to encourage the people you work with, and we will certainly work hard to get the survey to everyone and encourage people to take part in that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. I'm assuming that was the end of your presentation there. Thank you very much. Trustees, so we do have a information sheet on page 36 of the agenda. And if you have any questions for Mr. Johnston. Thanks for that. Just before we start, thanks for this work. I know that this is a big project. It's some challenging but important work, and I look forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you. Our people have really engaged it. It's rewarding work, and I think everybody understands and feels the need to do this. So I appreciate the support from the board.
Are there any questions of Mr. Johnston? Chantal?
Feel like I'm speaking a lot tonight. Thank you for this work, integral work. I've already said this a few times now, and I'll keep saying it over and over and over again, because this journey never ends. But my question here is the number one. I actually opened up the survey too, by the way, so I started filling it out already because I was so excited. I'm just wondering, the audit, you said it's a list of stakeholders. Do you have like a sample of the stakeholders that we're connecting with to get feedback on this and things like that?
Yeah, I don't have the list in front of me. I'm actually in Vancouver for a conference. I don't have that in front of me, but I do have a list that I've been working with Stephanie Johnson and with our contractor. We have a meeting set for, I'd have to look at my calendar, next week to finalize that. You know, we've played with the list and gotten it probably too long, and we want to optimize it to make the best use of the money we're going to spend on this, but you know, not make it too small and not get the information we need. So we've got people on that list from the different demographics that we worry, might not have experienced, Jedi historically. People from the unions will be included in that. Yeah. I should have had it in front of me. I don't, and
It's okay. Thank you. It sounds like it's still kind of in progress anyway, right? So it's ever changing and ever growing, and yeah, excited to see the work, and it's fantastic. Thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments?
Sean, may the force be with you on this journey. I wanted to ask you a question about in the handout you'd given. You'd just wanted to find it. You'd mentioned that one of the follow-up was going to be one-on-one interviews with rights holders, including those with lived experiences of oppression. So how are you finding these people in the follow-up one-on-ones? Is that based on how they've identified them themselves in the survey, or?
It could be. Sorry, was that the end of the question?
Well, that was the end, yeah. Yeah.
It could be. We could have people, fill out the written parts of the survey that we identify, this is somebody that we should talk further with. But other people, it's kind of been a collaborative effort to identify people who might fill a specific role. For example, and I'm gonna, Chris Perrier Evely is the NDTA. I forget his role. He'll remind me next time I talk to him. But he's a member of the LGBTQ2+ community and does a lot of work in that. So I reached out to him to ask if he would be willing to spend some time doing this work to inform our work in that way. Ricky Bartlett is going to find me somebody, or persons to present Indigenous perspectives in this work. So that's how we've kind of gone about the work in finding preliminary people to participate in these interviews.
Could it be possible? You mentioned that you've sent the surveys out to staff, but just embedded in that survey could be a question: would you be willing to do a follow-up one-on-one interview with me? And that way you're actually getting people. The survey might be a little more authentic. I don't know if that's the right word. If you're having people actually volunteering by saying, yes, like I filled out this form, I'd be very willing to share, rather than us picking people to provide the information. Just a thought.
Yeah, sure. And I'll talk about that with the contractor. My worry is the time commitment to doing it incredibly widely. I mean, I think this work is probably, these interviews aren't with me. They'll be with our contractor, which provides some level of anonymity to this process if they want that. We do have district people who can participate and provide their views, but some people might want that, and working with contractors costs a lot of money. I'd be concerned to commit to overcommit my budget to anyone checking the box. But let me talk to the contractor about that. Let me raise that in my meeting and see if that might be a good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, next.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, I appreciate the effort to reach out to staff, current staff, and I'm wondering if there's any efforts to reach out to people that were formerly in our employ, people who may have run up against these issues. I'm concerned that twofold, that I'm not sure how prepared people are to come forward to talk about these things while they're still employed with the district. And second of all, I think some of the biggest lessons we could possibly learn are from some of the great staff we've lost over the years. So are there any efforts in that area? I know it may be more difficult, but it seems like the tougher conversations will bear the bigger fruit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good point. You definitely want to hear from the people who it didn't work for. That could be key data, and I agree with you. They're harder to reach. It's a lot easier to get an email through to people with an SD68 email address. This survey is going out to and available to the public. You're asked to identify, the group you belong to, being current teachers, student, staff, member of the public, parent, etc. But I don't know, we will be marketing it and working on getting it out there, and I hope those voices are heard. I would welcome people to participate. Our current staff, and this is in the intro to the survey, I hope they aren't fearful of participating in this survey and being as honest as possible. It is anonymous to us. It is to me. This information is going through to the contractor, and we will get the data that comes out of it. But I'm not going to know who said what.
We can follow up, Tom. Okay, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, to Sean. Thank you for the great work. Just 30-second question. Is this the survey that was sent today?
Yes.
That we received? Okay, I already did. It was a
Thank you.
Pretty good survey. Thank you.
The survey is the good work of the contractor. They're the experts in this area, and really appreciate the work that they did on it.
I don't see any further. Oh, maybe I do. Spoke too soon. Chantal.
Wondering if people have accessibility issues and reading the survey or filling out the survey, is there a way for them to get in touch? Who they would call the number, would they, on the survey?
I believe so. Yeah, that'd be the best way for them to do it, and then they could do it anonymously, like everyone else.
Okay, great. So we could just direct them, say, if you have any, accessibility barriers, just call this number, or I'll call the number, and okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Here. Anyone else?
Good question.
I don't see any further comments, so I'll thank you again, Mr. Johnston, for this work.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone's support.
Have a good evening. Moving on in our agenda to item 13.2, NDSS consultation. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Chair. And good evening, trustees and members of the community. So this evening I am bringing a draft report with a recommended motion to proceed to consult our community on an issue associated with the capacity of Nanaimo District Secondary School. So we did bring this topic to the board's attention last year, and then I believe last month as well, to tell the board that they could anticipate that we would be bringing some options in the hopes of going to consultation. We have been to the Long Range Facilities Plan Committee with the items that you see in the report to talk it through, make sure that we've captured what should be in the report before coming to the board, and then again, of course, seeking support to go to consultation. So maybe I'll go through what we're suggesting and then talk about what consultation is intended to look like, and then what changes could happen as well. So the document with draft clearly on the cover is in the agenda starting at page 63. And so we've called it ensuring capacity and safety. We do want to focus on the fact that this is more about capacity than it is about safety. But we know that NDSS is at the absolute top of the board's priority list from a capital perspective. And so we don't want to take an opportunity away from addressing that particular topic. So the seismic safety, the environmental health and safety generally of an older facility, we want to address that. So there's a bit of capital suggested in here as well, but this is predominantly about safety. So this consultation or this document is written somewhat similar to what the board would have seen in the North End and in Ladysmith, but the difference would be is a little bit more directive. So we kind of said in the community to the community in the North End, here's 5 really kind of wide open disparate options. What do you think? Ladysmith, we said here's 3 relatively wide options. What do you think? Here we're saying we've knocked some things off the list already, and here's why we're suggesting that they get knocked off the list. And so just to be transparent to the community, doesn't mean the board can't say, no, this is what we want to do, or the community comes back and says that. But what we're saying is we don't want to go to the community with an option that we don't think is a good one or a viable one or a quick one, frankly. So why are we here? We are here because ND is well over capacity. So sitting at 1636, it was sitting higher than that in fall. It's slated, and so we've lost a few kids. It's typical for secondary. We have also are projecting, based off our elementary enrollments alone, leave building out of it for a second, that ND is going to go up again, top 1700, and it basically did this year before we settled it down to 1630. So we knew this was coming, and we've taken some steps to alleviate this issue. So the board, all of the centralized district space is gone out of ND. The board meeting, or the board district meeting space, has been moved to Dufferin. The Nanaimo Ladysmith Foundation had space in the school. We had our enrollment folks in the school. We had our Indigenous resource space in the school. All of those have been moved either online or over to Dufferin. And so that's made it a little bit easier. And so ND was built for 1400. We've got 6 portables on site, or we're going to end up having that space to bring it to 1550. But there's a few things. One, portables don't provide additional gym space. They do not provide additional elective space. They do not provide additional science space. So it's not optimal situation if there's alternatives. So the other thing about capacities in secondary is typically the Ministry of Education, and I think the experience across the province, is that you can go a little bit above the capacity and still serve kids in a reasonable way. And obviously ND is doing it. It's still a desirable school. But at the same time, the Classroom Enhancement Fund, so the court decision that brought class size and composition back to the 1991 collective agreement, what that's done is it actually is made the capacity of 1400 ND without the portables. It's actually probably less than that. Not probably, it is in fact less than that. But we're just going by the base of the school. So what we've done is we've provided information on where kids are coming from, the feeder schools, the programs at ND, what limits, the limits on international students as an example. And then come to the conclusion that still we think that even with the steps we've taken, what's coming means that we have to do more. So we've contemplated a number of scenarios that we're not suggesting to the public. And so again, this idea, why go to the public with something that's either not doable, cause consternation unnecessarily. And so the idea of moving French immersion. I understand at some point that the bubble was floated, perhaps that French immersion could move. And in reality, couldn't move it to Barsby. There's simply no space, and wouldn't have the space to fit the growth at Barsby in the coming years. Cedar, there would be no space. Ladysmith be close, but there's still no space. So there's really no space to move the French immersion program. The idea of reopening Woodlands on its face is not a bad one. It would take care of enrollment issues in the short term, but the capital cost, we have to reinvent high school in a space that we've largely stripped of secondary, spaces, is not going to be a cheap endeavor. The other thing we would be doing in that case is adding a massive seismic project to our list, one that's almost not as big as ND because it's only about half the size, but it would be incredibly expensive, and I would have very unlikely that we would get the support to do that in the short term at least. The other part is that if we did it, there's not quite enough kids to make it a go of it right now. That might be different in a decade. But what we'd be in the pressure to do is to fund it. We'd either have to really cut a lot of educational programs, or we would have to bulk up our international program in a significant way, putting that school perhaps at a very high percentage of international kids. And so we're not suggesting that Woodlands actually is not well placed for the future, but we're not suggesting that it's a short-term solution to ND. It's realistic or one that we should proceed. Now, the other question that has already come up, well, why wouldn't you put French immersion at Woodlands? Well, perhaps, but again, now all of a sudden we still have the issue of what programs are we going to cut to fund the operations of the school. You can't use the international program at a French immersion school to actually kind of subsidize the programming that we would have to pay for. And so that'd be difficult, let alone the question of what happens to learning alternatives, which I think I've heard the superintendent talk about is one of the key programs. The focus on learning alt and the program at Woodlands has led to the increased graduation rates that have just really taken off in the last 4 years. So many reasons that it's a good idea, but many reasons that it's problematic. We see in a moment, we're going to talk about a recommendation to move a school that's bused to ND, to a catchment school. Mountain View theoretically could be in the same position. But in our estimation, now we're looking at driving directly by the secondary school that we're talking about. And so that didn't, and there are some kids that are going to walk, and we're going to actually make sure they're out of walking route if we move to Barsby. So all of a sudden, if the city creates, safer streets, or RDNs create safer streets to Mountain View, we may back off on our busing. We'd not be able to do that if that came to pass, that we move the kids to Barsby. Expansion of NV to 17 or 18 or maybe 1900. Well, I think as a district, we haven't necessarily had the conversation whether we're interested in schools of that size. We may well be having that soon in Dover's case in the next 10 years, but it's not ideal, I think. And the reality is that if we were to expand it, the district is not only going to have to fund a bunch of that money on our own, we're not going to see that expansion for 5 years. And so we'd just be adding portable after portable after portable on the front lawn, on the parking lot in the back. And so it's just not a short-term solution. Theoretically, it could be a long-term solution if that's what we were seeing. So again, the report points out that the board has already taken steps to address this issue, but we need to take more now. So we've talked about the long-term long-range facilities plan goals and attached it to what we've put here. And so when the long-range facilities plan came out and the consultation occurred with the public, some of the things that we're talking about in this document were specifically referenced. So alleviating the medium and long-term issues by working through the LRFP committee, expansion existing, opening new, reopening schools. So new school wouldn't be needed. Talked about why Woodlands wouldn't necessarily work in the circumstance. There is a recognition that perhaps a small expansion would be appropriate. Then recommendation 7, is it possible to move programs from schools that are under-enrolled or from over-enrolled to under-enrolled? And ND is frankly the poster child for that, I think, that particular recommendation. Programming including French immersion, international student education and academies. Again, said here's why we don't think French immersion is one that we should put up for discussion, just because it's not the size of it wouldn't allow for it. But the other two, one we're already dealing with international students, the other is academies that we'll get to in just a moment. And then finally is the prioritizing the upgrade of ND. So the idea is we put our best foot forward. The board continues to advocate going to get it soon. Going to get it soon, whether it's going to be approved this year or next year, we're going to keep working on that. But even if we do, the expansion, as you'll see, the recommendation is not to bring it to 17 or 1800, it's to look at bringing it to 1500. So with that, we have created a number of scenarios that we think are ones that we're asking for the board to support that we go and consult. These scenarios don't need to be all. However, you'll see there's a bit of sense to making multiple choices. So the first scenario is Gabriola students attending Cedar. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing that we may alter this report with is I've already been asked questions about the report. One question is, why don't you double shift ND? So the idea is that you stagger the start, you stagger the end, you stagger the lunch. So you have 2 shifts of ND. And with a district, frankly, with capacity at some of our schools, and with the fine, athletics programs and extracurricular programs that we have and our particular needs of engaging kids before, after school, etc., that would limit participation in some of those things by the staggering. And so what happens if you're a school district and you've doubled in size and you haven't had capital in years, you might have no choice. You might have 3,000 kids and have 2,000 kids size school, and you don't have any choice but to do it. That's not what we're looking at here. So you can fit more kids in because you add a block at the end of the day, a block at the beginning of the day. Not something that we actively contemplated. So if the community's feedback is ND or nothing and the board wants to listen to that, that's certainly something we could do, not something we're recommending. So first one is move the Gabriola catchment to Cedar. And so Gabriola is a school that's fully bused. And so they get picked up at the ferry and then they're bused to ND. And so yes, ND is closer. Technically, Cedar is actually closer to Gabriola by the Crow, but obviously by driving from the ferry, ND is significantly closer. But from a time perspective, it is not. So a very quick look at how long it takes to get to ND versus Gabriola is really insignificant when you're thinking about these issues. So is it reasonable and possible to do that? Yes. Is it desirable? And did the community want it? And is the board comfortable with that? That's what we want to go ask. That's the next question we want to go ask. We do note that there is some issues with it. One, we'd have to look at maybe changing bell schedules to make the buses work. The other question is, it's the same, I guess, for ND, is if you want to join that sports team and you got to stay till 5, it's a bit easier to get to the ferry from ND than it is to Gabe. And so those are some of the things that we have to think about. Cedar will benefit from it in a reasonably big way. They'll have more access to academics. They'll have more likelihood of having more people involved in extracurriculars and sports. Those students at Gabriola will transition from our second smallest elementary school and to our smallest secondary school, both significant, similar experiences. Of course, missing out on that opportunity for the larger amenities offered at a larger school. So there's definitely some issues. The second one that we're looking at that we'd like to go talk to the community about is moving any or all of the academies from ND to Barsby. And so lacrosse, soccer, hockey, and volleyball. Barsby is about to, through our partnership with the city, is going to have facilities that are going to be top-notch. They're going to have 2 all-weather fields. They're going to have, and I know it's a field lacrosse program, but they're going to have essentially a covered and an outdoor lacrosse box, in addition to the grass fields that we will maintain. And so similar, the access to facilities is going to be continued if that was the direction. From an impact perspective, the lacrosse, we suspect that lacrosse will be healthy wherever we put it, whether there's controversy in the movement of it or not. Soccer and volleyball, maybe there's a bit more of a question about what happens to those programs if we move them. Do the kids go? Do they stay viable? Of course, when you move them, lots of conversations happen about transferring the staff with them, and we would foresee that to be the intent of the movement. Hockey might be a bit different given the board's kind of environmental goal, and so the idea of moving them from a school that are a block across the street from their hockey rink and having to bus them to the hockey rink. Now, if we have e-buses, maybe that works. The kids used to come from Woodlands by bus to the rink, so it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. But we'll say that that's one of the ones that if you said move 3 out of 4. If that was something that the board was interested, we'd probably say hockey might not quite be for that reason, the number 1. So what I did mention, sorry, about Gabriola is the impact if we move Gabriola is going to range from year to year. If every student went, we'd be looking at between 70 and 100 kids, depending on the cohorts. We've got slightly smaller elementary cohorts coming up through Gabe right now. And so we're looking at the lower edge of impact on ND, but say for 70 to 100. With respect to programs, if all of the kids moved with all of the programs, we'd be oversubscribing. We'd be maxing Barsby at the very least, maybe even out of portable at that point. It's unlikely, we suspect, that all of the kids will move with the program. You see there's a breakdown of where the kids live. So some of the kids, ND kids that join soccer, but they'd be ND kids if soccer moved, and versus they're gonna move. So we're anticipating that we would not get the movement of 100% of the students with those programs. And so we're predicting, 50, 60, etc. We don't, it's not a number we can actually come with certainty on what the impact will be. But already you add up to 150, 160, and our issue in the short term is solved at ND. The third one is the idea that if you go and you leave a program, so French immersion or at the academies, that we say to you, and some school districts do this, is that we are going to ask you to go back to your home school. Now, our rules are if there's room at your school, you get to stay. So the highly likelihood would be that ND kids probably don't have to go back to their home schools. And it wouldn't be like it's November 11th and you don't like it anymore and it's not working, go back. I think it would be, let's look at transitioning you back. But I think the reality is we need to look at our individual students and how that can impact them. And so I'm not sure that particular recommendation would have a huge impact, except for perhaps to limit enrollment in some of the programs. So I know I'm not going to go try it because then I have to go back. I think that's the bigger impact. So say maybe 10 or 20 kids. Perhaps I'm proud of it. The fourth option is just portables. So we continue to add portable after portable after portable after portable. We've got, it lays out how many we have. We're planning 2 more for September because the solution's not coming and we need to move them out of Ham Bay in any event. And so 2 more for September, but we'd like to make that the last of the portables that ND sees. That if unless again the community says, no, we want the way that it works. We don't want change, and the board is sympathetic to that. And we will continue portables on site. Do we have the space? Yes. Will it look nice? No. Will it feel tight? Yes. But it is a possibility. And then the last one is, and we actually have this in our capital program now with respect to ND, and that's a small expansion at ND and a small expansion at Wellington. And that Wellington is to capture growth. So at some point, as Dover continues to grow, maybe we can move some kids from Dover to Wellington. And then the other one, of course, is ND. If we could have it at 15 and keep it around 15, maybe a little bit larger as we grow as a community, then that works really well. So we think that that's kind of a reasonable medium-term solution as well. So what we're looking at is some controversial suggestions, trying to move about 150 to 200 students that we get ND solved by 2024, or at least the solution in place to know it's coming by 2024. Our timing is this. We want to go talk to the community. And so if, say, for instance, the Gabriola community was totally in support of this, or majority in support of this, well, then maybe what we would do is we'd say, great, let's see, is it the current grade 7s, 8s, and 9s? Is it just the current grade 7s and then we put it in over 5 years? Or is it a mixture and volunteers who want to do it right away? Because I don't think we would want to ask kids right in the middle of their graduation program to move on. So we wouldn't be suggesting that all of those students move right away, but that's part of the discussion. With respect to the programs, that's a little less simple because your program needs that number to kind of keep robust. So we're not suggesting for September 2023, because kids are already enrolling, but we do want them to know the conversation's happening, and so that might impact their enrollment. But the fields we anticipate to be ready in the fall. And so if that's the case, then there's really nothing preventing us from September 2024. Barsby will start to fill, and there will be an impact on limiting a bit of space available to the Learning Alternatives program. It's already shrunk a little bit as a footprint, and we're actually anticipating that if we need, we would put, to ensure that we're able to support those students still, we could move a portable to Barsby. So, I know we're trying to avoid portables, but 1 or 2 versus, 13 and having them evened out is the kind of risk that we're suggesting might be in circumstances. So our goal is, if the board approves, we would like to put this out to start consultation, and you'll see the various thought exchange that we put to the community. We'd make staff available, like we'll call like a formal meeting, but we'd also make staff available to come and describe what we're thinking, get some feedback to be able to come and report to the board. The board will be invited to any of the meetings that we have. At this point, we would foresee them as kind of staff-led meetings, introduce trustees so they can hear what the community is saying. With a report, goal is before spring break, if we can, to come back to the board. There's no requirement whatsoever for the timing to be that, except for it influences decisions. And if we're going to move, if there is an appetite for Gabriel to transition in 23, whatever that looks like, we want to know before we're staffing. And so that's a bit of the reason that we want to limit it to that kind of month. So happy to answer any questions. What I would ask is, if you see a typo, maybe email me and copy Karen rather than let's do the typos now. And appreciate it if you do see them, so please send them out. But again, recommended motion is there, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Excellent work. And what we have before us is a recommended motion, which, as I look at it, it's kind of like a suite of 5 potential options for addressing capacity that we want to seek feedback on. That's how I see this, and I guess the idea now is to see what the board thinks about proceeding with the options with respect to getting community feedback, not actually implementing them at this point. We want to hear from the community what their thoughts are with respect to these options.
Just to clarify, we're not discussing the NDSS conundrum, we're discussing the effort to get community engagement with the NDSS. I should have turned myself on. I'm sorry.
Sure. So the question, in case you didn't hear it, the question was, are we just talking about whether we're just going to public consultation or we are talking about the issues generally at ND? And what I would say is that it's a bit of both, in the sense that if the board has something that's just like, never in a million years do we want to even ask the community, like we didn't put French immersion on there, maybe the board wants to put French immersion. Right. Or maybe we put French immersion on there and the board goes, take that one off.
Okay.
So I would say it is a bit of both. Like, you're not being asked to make a choice, but if there's something that's so obviously missing, like right at this very moment, or something that so obviously shouldn't be on there, then I would probably seek that guidance to remove it. Nothing to stop the board from adding or subtracting later. It's just that if we have a whole new option at the end of the process that the community hasn't had feedback on, that we know we're already going to add, then we probably have to go back to consult.
Good. That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I do have a speakers list. I have Tanya, Charlene, Mark, and Naomi. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anybody.
You can add me too.
I'll add Tom to the list. Okay, so Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Walsh. Mark, the recommendations and the ones that you took off the table generally made sense to me, but I guess the one thing I'm a little confused about is, in terms of Mountain View, aren't those students generally, again, right now at least, aren't those students generally bused anyway? And if not, I mean, if so, what's the difference between busing them to Barsby versus busing them to where they're currently going, which is ND?
So Through you, Chair. So that's a good question. And so many of them are bused. And so that would be a possibility of busing them to Barsby. And again, our thought is that given the proximity to ND, it's a little bit awkward in that sense because you're going to be coming right by ND. And then if the roads change and then we're going to stop busing you, then are we going to move your catchment back to Mountain View? And maybe that's too long, and they're optimistic that it's going to be a safe way to get from Jinglepot to ND, but that was part of the thinking.
Okay, thank you. And I will say thank you for not putting French immersion on the on as a proposed suggestion, because we've had the conversation multiple times and it gets nowhere. It just upsets people.
Thank you, Tanya. Would you like a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I'll move on to Charlene.
Thank you. I'll just start with saying thank you to the Long Range Facilities Plan Committee members. It's a large group of people, and to staff for putting this together. I know how much work goes into these documents that we get ready to send out to the public. So I think I have a two-part question. My first is process-wise. I recognize we have some time constraints as we're trying to accomplish this before spring break. So just confirming that if there's feedback on the document that's been presented, the draft document that's been presented, we're able to provide that tonight outside of any typos, and that if the recommendation is approved, the document would be edited and include our discussions this evening. So just looking for process confirmation, and then I have a specific question.
Through you, Chair, yes, that would be exactly the intention.
Okay, thank you. So my question then would be, I guess I would request if the rest of the board thought it was a good idea. I think that we have a really unique community that we're talking about, that one entire scenario is designed around, which is Gabriola. And when I'm looking at the opportunities for consultation, I see that it says targeted opportunities where requested, but I think we need to specifically identify Gabriola as a place where we actually go to them and be in community with them. It's a unique place. I think that it shows that we're really willing to listen and hear from the community, and I just kind of want to identify that within the document. That we would specifically go to Gabriola to receive that consultation piece. It's just one that really stands out to me as important. There's such a unique community, and anyways, so I'm hoping that would be put in there somehow.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So we discussed that, and then we were thinking we'd probably do Gabriola and ND, and then we thought, well, given the interest, it's just going to happen anyway. But if the board feels that we should spell it out, I would maybe suggest that we do both, in fact.
Yeah, I would like
perhaps an online ND separate from the online opportunity plus an in-person Gabriola.
Yeah, that would be my preference if that was the will of the board. Thank you.
And I agree with Charlene's suggestion. Is everyone in agreement with that? It's good. Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the suggestion. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'll start. Charlene kind of beat me to the punch a little bit. I was going to bring up Gabriola, but in a different context. A lot of us went to Gabriola before we were elected, and we were asked point blank, would we consider some sort of expansion to Gabriola, or some sort of a way where they could continue on to grade 8 or possibly grade 9. In my mind, that would somewhat alleviate a little bit of the number of students going to NDSS. So my question through you, Chair, to staff would be looking at option number, and I believe it is scenario 5, expand NDSS by 100 and expand Wellington by 100. Is there a possibility that we could sort of make it 5.5 and sort of add in expansion of Gabriola as well. And I'm wondering why that hasn't been included. Thanks, Mark.
Through Chair. So we actually wouldn't need to expand Gabriola to achieve that. But I think that there's educational implications of given the number of students, so it would be attending, say, grade 8, 9, if we kept it at Gabriola, that we didn't put it as an option. We anticipated to get some feedback on that because we've actually heard a little bit about that. We were going to put it in the considered and didn't recommend because of the educational impacts. We thought it might be better to hear the public feedback as other ideas. We've heard bubblings of it because I think that the ND problem has well known for a little bit. So that's why we're not recommending it, because I don't think we think it's a great educational outcome, just because we'd only have 2 teachers to teach all of grade 8 and 9, which is not going to be super easy in the circumstances. So we were agnostic, we're silent on it. That's the reason. So we could go either way, but at this point, we wouldn't recommend as an option that staff would be suggesting to the board to consider. The community comes back with, this is the only thing we want, then of course the board has that opportunity.
Hello. Thank you, Mark. Again, through you, Chair, to well, I guess I'll start by saying, if I'm not mistaken, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but each of us that went to Gabriola and we were asked questionnaires published in the newspaper, each and every one of us said, yes, we would absolutely consider having grade 8s, grade 9s, and maybe some of us didn't, but my memory serves me correctly, we all did. I think that it should be considered. Having said that, I understand that there are educational struggles in terms of making, only 1 or 2 teachers that could teach grade 8, grade 9. I understand that. And there's a bit of a sacrifice from the parents' point of view, saying, I want my kids to be younger a little bit more. I want my kids to be on the island more and stay away from the city. You can appreciate that from a parental point of view. But I guess through the consultation process, it'll come out, I guess through you, Chair, to staff, would be, notwithstanding that it was not recommended and not recommending nor not recommending it, could we make sure that is included in the consultation process? So when the parents have their feedback, it's included, because I do specifically remember a consultation process closing Rutherford Elementary a few years ago, and there were options that were not included specifically, and that was designed by the board and not by staff. So I just want some reassurance that the Gabriola parents will have the opportunity to not have A, B, or C, but there's no D, and they don't have that option, and they can't say that. We can say, oh, they never brought it up. That's what I'm worried about. So thank you, Chad.
Through Chair, so the board will have access to all of the feedback, like at the thought exchange, every single comment, like the stuff that we're not necessarily going to make all public, but we have concentrated themes, reports. The board will have access to all of them. And staff endeavors very hard to represent what we've heard from the community, even if we're not recommending it. So the board, that's the theme, the board will see that.
Right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to Trustee Bailey.
Thank you, Trustee Keller, through you to Mr. Walsh. Trustee Robinson beat me to it because I actually had last night spent some time doing some calculations about Gabriola, because I was a little concerned as well that we that it was not included, the concept of adding 8 and 9 to that school. They had empty classrooms that are being used by the community right now. I educationally don't feel that there is anything wrong with extending it to 8 and 9. And them close, tight to their community might be a good thing, which is what parents expressed, was them the students going to NDSS, and it's such a big school, overpopulated. Way I calculated it out was there's 91 students right now currently going to attending NDSS, and if you take the 8 and 9s out of the equation, that's about 36 students that could remain for 2 years at Gabriola. And they're definitely, from my experience, because I worked at a school, I was principal of a school that was actually grades 4 to grade 9, that you can find teachers that can teach those subject areas, because they're not getting as technically they're not as challenging as you get into the grade 10 curriculum, which the science does require for sure a teacher that is science-based in their knowledge and expertise, and same with math. I'm sure we could find teachers that would be able to teach 8 and 9. And so I myself would like to see that as a sort of an option, or there'd be a section for Gabriola parents to at least express that they are interested in this idea of an 8, 9 grade in their school. Yeah, that was just mainly what I wanted to say.
Okay.
So it really wasn't a question, it was more a comment, sorry.
Okay, so I'll move on my list. Tom, thank you.
For that. Yeah, thanks for the great report. And I really like the way that the options have been laid out for us, whether they're yay or nay. And I think that's great transparency and open governance. And I think that breeds a lot of trust in the system. So thank you for that. I had a couple of comments. Just quickly on the Gabriola one. Yeah, when we spoke about with those families about trying to expand 8 and 9 on Gabriola, I had concerns that what we would be able to do academically may be limited by staffing. I actually had a thought about maybe it might be a location for like an ICE hub. So for families that wanted to keep their kids supported on the island without having to move an entire school organization over there, and move in. But we could, because you can take high school anywhere, right? But what the families may want is some support on the island, and that may just be a couple of teachers to do that. So maybe I think if we're going to keep any kind of secondary programming on the island, you're going to lose options like electives and things like that. But I think families know that. I think those are choices that they're making eyes wide open. So I would encourage to keep that conversation going. I think there's a few ways to skin that cat. My main question before people brought up the Gabriola stuff was around the programs of choice and moving them to one school. I really kind of feel that historically, one of the times that NDSS started to move in a different direction was, anyone remember the Osmo years? One school, many opportunities. And this to me is when NDSS started to kind of grow beyond its catchment and to stop serving its neighborhood. I went to NDSS, I taught at NDSS 20 years ago. Back then, the only out of catchment students were the French immersion students. And even at that, whenever you drop a program of choice into a school, there's an impact on the culture. And so I'm worried about dropping them all into Barsby. It's already an incredibly vulnerable population, and it really does its best work when it focuses on the needs of the neighborhood. I want to caveat that by saying it would be cool to have an opportunity down there for kids, especially if we could do something about fees, to get them in there. Like I lacrosse in that neighborhood just kind of sings to me. But the idea of taking all of our programs of choice and moving them again to another school and having that school try to accommodate culturally that big different demographic coming in, I wonder if we're just not making the same mistake again. So I look at the way that our fine arts academies work, and they're spread out, they're decentralized. You go to Dover for drama, you go to jazz music at Wellington. I'm sorry if I'm missing somebody. But those allowed those programs to recruit people in for excellent training and excellent opportunities, but they don't do so much to kind of add this second school to this already school, because then you have a challenge of staff trying to accommodate what are really two demographics. One, the local catchment, which I really feel is important to serve first, maybe just my own values, and then these opportunities for enrichment. Putting them all at one site seems, I would like to explore the opportunity of moving those programs of choice to a variety of locations so that the impact isn't as severe on one school's culture. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I believe Mr. Walsh would like to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just, we didn't put this in a considered and we didn't put it as one of the X's. One of the concerns that we had, and noted already that hockey, again, geographically makes a lot of sense where it is. So maybe that's less likely for consideration. But the other thing is, someone pointed out, Cedar's got a great space for volleyball. It's true, but the transportation issue with transit was one of the reasons that the programs, we can't put another student at Dover. We can't put another student at Wellington. And it's hard to transit to Cedar, which was kind of the thinking of ours.
Yeah, it's trying to see.
And then before I move on, I guess I just want to maybe recognize that, this is a challenging situation.
Didn't happen overnight.
And I think we're doing our best here to try and identify reasonable options. And we're not being asked to make a decision this evening. What we're doing is being asked to make a decision on whether we're okay to explore and get feedback on these options. If there are any options that are, from the board's perspective, non-starters that maybe shouldn't be there, or vice versa that you think should be there. So good points though.
I just see whether if we added the 8-9 at Gabriola to the section that we said considered and not recommended, so at least it's there for people to respond to, would that be satisfactory to the board? Doesn't mean the board couldn't go that direction if the feedback was there. Would that?
I was going to suggest that, so I'm glad you beat me to it. It sounds like we've got some trustees who are interested in at least identifying that option and any rationale relating to why it wasn't on the recommended list. Okay, I will move on my list. I'm going to go to Leanne first. And then back to Tanya.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's more of a comment just in regards to the Gabriola comments. So since we went over to Gabriola and had that initial conversation, there have been other conversations with Gabriola, with the principal and with parents. And that particular concern has not been brought forward again. So I personally am comfortable with the way the plan is laid out. Because I also recognize through going through multiple consultations that people can put whatever they would like on there. They can offer their suggestions. And a lot of the times we get really great ideas coming back that we didn't think of, and that's the beauty of why we send it out. So I personally find the Gabriel plan. If the appetite is there, people.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. It was actually covered by what we've decided around making a reference in the report to considered but not recommended around the 8-9 piece. That was what I want to talk about.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? We do have a motion in your agenda package if someone would like to read it. Naomi?
At the Board of Education of School District number 68 in Lady Smith, direct staff to initiate a consultation process with respect to addressing capacity issues at Nanaimo District Secondary School with potentially impacted communities and report back to the board with recommendations and next steps for the board.
That was second. Mark. Discussion? Actually, sorry, I gotta go back to Naomi. Make the motion.
Yeah, of course, this has been an ongoing discussion. I know for a while, board and staff, and need to start addressing the NPSS issue. So I fully support consultation.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. The motion is timely. Well, it's better late than never. We definitely need to move on this as fast as possible. I like the time frame where we consult in February and come back in March, I believe, is said in the report. So that's quick and timely. Consultation, I hope, is as broad as possible and robust as possible to get as maximum amount of input as we can. So we as a board can make the best decision that we can, because we can't mess it up. It's important. And I have faith that each and every one of us is going to sharpen our pencils and do what we need to do. So thank you for the work, Mr. Walsh. Thank you for the work, board. And we'll on the days ahead, I hope that trustees have an opportunity to participate somehow in the process. Not necessarily our opinions, but the listening process. I know that that's happened in the past, and if we were invited, be more than happy to help out in any aspect to get the gears going. I hope we all do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I guess I'll also speak in favor of the motion. I'd just like to acknowledge the work that went into the document. To have a document that's laid out in that fashion, that really does a good job, I think, of presenting options, giving the community and the board rationale, and it's really laid out really clearly. So I really appreciate that work, and I think our district's very lucky to have staff in-house that can do that. So thank you for that work. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded, and everyone's had a chance to speak. On in the chat. Okay, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 13.3, Superintendent Saywell, the Ministry of Education and Childcare Compliance Audit.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Through you, Chair. On page 79 of your agenda, you'll have seen the information sheet on audit compliance. I'll share a little bit more information and then open up for questions. So school districts are funded by the Ministry of Education and Childcare, and every year on September 30th, which is also known as Snapshot Day, school districts submit what is called a 1701 form, which is essentially a student data collection form, which translates into a claim for funding of all the different funding categories, from adult, continuing education, Indigenous students, English language learners, and so on. So the Funding and Financial Accountability Branch of the Resource Management Division conducts compliance review of school districts based on those funding claims. These audits are undertaken in the areas of continuing education, inclusive education, online learning, summer learning, and what is a K-12 regular enrollment audit, which is what we will be receiving. And that includes Indigenous education and English language learning supplemental services. So the audit ensures there's evidence that the services are being claimed for students are being provided to those students, and that the required paperwork is also being completed. So the audit is not district-wide, but it targets a number of schools, and those schools selected, again in your agenda, John Barsby Secondary, Quam-Combs-Staliqua, Learning Alternatives, and the Career Technical Center. So the auditors, typically a team of 6 or 7 individuals, will be in the district from February 13th to the 17th, so for the full week. Looking at those 4 schools I mentioned, and each funding source has what's called an audit compliance program, and each audit compliance program has an auditor's checklist. So they essentially checklist look here. So it's an example: online learning and are they're very separate and distinct. I'll finish by acknowledging the good work by staff, particularly Dawn Belko, Assistant Superintendent Secondary, who's leading this work. Lots of work done centrally and at the schools, of course, to support this process. And while the audit process is important, also incredibly time consuming. So we look forward to the outcome and pretty confident that our practices in claiming students will not result in any significant funding loss.
Thank you, Mr. Thaywell. Are there any questions? Tom?
That took too long. My apologies again. Yeah, the point, oh, geez, took so long, I lost my place. Hold on a second. You know what? Come back to me.
I'm not sure there's any to go to.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Mark?
Thank you. I'll begin by slowly just, actually, I'll cede the floor to Trustee Rokeby and come back to me. There we go.
Oh, well, thank you for that insight, Trustee Robinson, and your teamwork is much appreciated. I was just looking at what are seemingly 4 randomly selected schools in our district, and I couldn't help but feel they weren't that random. I couldn't help but feel that there was a pattern there. Is that because of the preponderance of second language learners and Indigenous studies at those schools? Or is that, or like there's nothing in our North End, there's nothing in our. So I'm just wondering how random that is. Is it random out of a set of criteria? Is it random out of schools they want to look at? It doesn't feel very random.
Mr. Thaywell?
I understand the selection process is random, Trustee Rokeby, so I couldn't speak to how they might appear to be not too random.
I agree with Trustee Rokeby. They do not appear to be random, and I'm sure it's a coincidence. However, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for the next audit to spread out the samples through you to staff. Thank you. If there's an opportunity for that.
Superintendent Thaywell?
Yeah, the Ministry of Education and Childcare does these audits, compliance audits in school districts all over the province, of course, and it's kind of, I guess from our perspective, a little hit and miss on what years they audit and which schools they audit. And these schools were selected just right at the beginning of the pandemic, and so we got a little reprieve over the last few years. So I think we're in a good place for the audit, but I really couldn't speak to the random nature of how they select the schools.
I'm just curious. It was the province that selected them?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hi, Naomi.
Just a question. So these compliance audits, will this also be, I noticed it said in the briefing that they'd be looking at programs for students, correct? So would that be Aboriginal, Indigenous education would be, we'd be looking at those numbers because we have funding specialized funding for Aboriginal students. Is that also?
That's
gonna-
absolutely correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, I've gone through that audit process, so I know how stressful it can be.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? I don't see any, so we'll move along in our agenda. No unfinished business or new business this evening. For information, we have the board motions report on page 80 of the agenda, as well as the trustee committee reports. Any questions or comments on that? No? Okay. Any questions this evening, Ms. Matthews? No questions this evening, so can I get a motion to adjourn?
May I have indulgence of the board for 30 seconds, Mr. Chair?
I will let it go this time. Sure.
Thank you very much. Just 30 seconds. Our superintendent sent us some information which was very interesting. That the province, the Ministry of Education, is putting an anti-racism package together, and it's quite comprehensive. And I'm very excited, and I look forward to it rolling out because I think it's timely, and I hope that everyone has an opportunity to look into it and get excited as I am. Thank you, Mr.
Great.
Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Tom, seconded by Mark. Anyone opposed? Trustee Pellegrin?
Recorded vote, please.
Yep. No, well, in all seriousness, no, thank you. We are adjourned. Good work, everyone.
Bye, everybody. You know.